procrastination isn't laziness, it's self-harm. Every time you delay what matters, you're choosing short-term comfort over long-term identity, and your brain is keeping score. Neuroscientists have found that chronic procrastinators have measurably higher stress levels, lower income, and worse health outcomes than people who take action. You're not just wasting time, you're rewiring your brain to expect failure. And by the end of this video, I'll show you the counterintuitive trick that destroys procrastination in under 90 seconds. But first, you need to see what procrastination is actually doing to your future. Let me show you something disturbing. Right now, there's a future version of you. 6 months from now, 1 year from now, that version is looking back at today, and they're either thanking you or resenting you. Every time you procrastinate, you're making a decision for that future person. You're deciding they'll be more stressed, more behind, more stuck. You think you're just delaying a task, but you're actually compounding anxiety, because the task doesn't go away, it grows. It mutates into guilt, shame, and self-hatred. Here's what most people don't understand about procrastination. It's not a time management problem, it's an emotion regulation problem. When you avoid starting that project, you're not avoiding the work. You're avoiding the feeling the work creates: fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. So your brain offers you a deal: feel good now, deal with the consequences later. And you take the deal, every single time. But here's the trap. The temporary relief you get from procrastinating actually makes the underlying fear worse. Psychologists call this negative reinforcement. You feel anxious about the task, you avoid it, the anxiety goes away temporarily, and your brain learns that avoidance works. So next time the anxiety is even stronger, and you need even more avoidance to cope. You're training your brain to be terrified of work. You're becoming allergic to your own potential. And here's where it gets darker. Procrastination creates a gap between your self-image and your reality. You see yourself as someone who has goals, ambitions, plans, but your actions tell a different story. Your actions say you're someone who talks but doesn't execute, someone who dreams but doesn't build. And that gap creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Your mind can't reconcile the difference, so it creates narratives. I'm just not ready yet. I work better under pressure. I'll start Monday. These aren't explanations. They're defense mechanisms protecting you from the truth. The truth is this: you're capable of more than you're currently doing. Significantly more. And deep down, you know it. That's why procrastination hurts. Because it's not just wasted time, it's wasted potential. It's the quiet awareness that you're choosing comfort over growth. And every day you make that choice, the gap between who you are and who you could be gets wider. Until one day you wake up and realize years have passed and nothing has changed. Now let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you just did the things you said you were going to do? Not perfectly, not even well, just did them. What if every time you felt resistance, you moved forward anyway? What if you treated procrastination like the enemy it actually is and fought back? The answer is simple: you'd be unrecognizable. You'd be living a completely different life. Because the difference between where you are and where you want to be isn't talent or luck or circumstances. It's action. Consistent, imperfect, uncomfortable action. But here's what nobody tells you. You can't think your way out of procrastination. You can't motivate your way out of it. You can't wait for inspiration or the perfect moment or the right mood. Those things are illusions. They're traps your brain sets to keep you stuck. The only way out of procrastination is through action. Immediate, decisive, unglamorous action. And I'm about to show you exactly how to force yourself into that action even when every cell in your body is screaming no. First, you need to understand what's happening in your brain when you procrastinate. There's a battle between two systems. Your limbic system, the ancient, emotional part of your brain, and your prefrontal cortex, the rational, future-oriented part. Your limbic system wants pleasure now. It doesn't care about tomorrow. It wants to scroll, to snack, to distract. Your prefrontal cortex knows you need to work. It sees the long-term consequences. But here's the problem: your limbic system is stronger. It's faster. It's louder. And unless you actively intervene, it wins every time. Most people try to fight the limbic system with willpower. They try to force themselves to focus, to resist distractions, to push through. And it works for a little while. But willpower is a finite resource. it depletes throughout the day. By the evening, you have almost none left. That's why you procrastinate on your most important tasks until the last minute, because you're trying to use a tool that's already empty. You're fighting biology, and biology always wins. So what do high performers do differently? They don't rely on willpower. They use what neuroscientists call environment design. They remove the need for willpower by controlling their environment. If you're trying not to check your phone, willpower says resist the urge. Environment design says put the phone in another room. If you're trying to start writing, willpower says just focus. Environment design says disconnect the internet and open a blank document before you can talk yourself out of it. But here's where it gets even more powerful. The real secret isn't just controlling your environment, it's shrinking the task, because procrastination thrives on overwhelm. When a task feels massive, your brain sees it as a threat. It activates your stress response, and your natural reaction to stress is avoidance. So you don't start because the starting point feels like standing at the base of a mountain with no clear path to the top. The solution is what psychologists call implementation intentions. You don't say, I'm going to work on my project. That's too vague, too big. Your brain doesn't know where to start. Instead, you say, I'm going to write one sentence. That's it. One sentence. Not a paragraph, not a page. One sentence. Your brain can't procrastinate on one sentence. It's too small to fear, so you write the sentence. And here's what happens next: momentum. This is the part most people miss. Starting is the hardest part, not because the work is hard, but because your brain builds up massive resistance to the unknown. Once you start, the resistance collapses, the anxiety drops, and suddenly the task doesn't feel as impossible as it did 5 minutes ago. This is why the first 2 minutes are everything. If you can get yourself to work for 2 minutes, you'll usually keep going, because motion creates motivation, not the other way around. Now here's the psychological insight that changes everything. Procrastination is a habit, and habits live in a loop: cue, routine, reward. The cue is the feeling of anxiety or boredom. The routine is avoidance. The reward is temporary relief. To break the habit, you don't fight the cue. You can't stop yourself from feeling anxious, but you can change the routine. When you feel the anxiety, instead of reaching for your phone, you open the document. You write one sentence. You replace avoidance with microaction. Do this enough times and your brain starts to rewire. The anxiety becomes a trigger for action instead of avoidance. The same feeling that used to paralyze you now activates you. This is neuroplasticity. This is how you kill procrastination at the root. You're not suppressing it, you're reprogramming the loop. And once the loop changes, procrastination loses its power. But let's be real, you're going to feel resistance. You're going to want to quit. You're going to have moments where your brain is screaming at you to stop and go do something easier. And this is the moment that separates people who break free from people who stay stuck. The moment of resistance is not a sign you're failing, it's a sign you're growing. It's your brain trying to pull you back to the familiar, and you have to override it. Here's how. When you feel the resistance, you name it, out loud. I'm feeling resistance right now. My brain wants me to stop, and I'm going to keep going anyway. This sounds simple, but it's devastatingly effective, because naming the feeling creates distance from it. You're no longer consumed by the resistance. You're observing it, and once you observe it, it loses control over you. You're no longer the resistance. You're the person watching the resistance, and that person gets to decide what happens next. And here's the brutal truth. Procrastination isn't something you defeat once. It's something you fight every single day. High performers don't procrastinate less because they're more disciplined. They procrastinate less because they've built systems that make procrastination harder than working. They've designed their lives so the path of least resistance is the path of productivity. And you can do the same. Tonight, before you go to bed, you're going to do something different. You're going to choose one task, just one, the task you've been avoiding. And you're going to break it down into the smallest possible starting action. Not the whole thing, just the first 2 minutes. Then you're going to decide exactly when and where you'll do those 2 minutes tomorrow. You're going to pre-commit. You're going to remove the decision from the moment. Because here's what happens when you pre-commit. When tomorrow comes and it's time to start, you don't ask yourself if you feel like it. You don't negotiate. You don't wait for motivation. You just execute. Your past self made the decision. Your present self follows through. And after 2 minutes, you'll either keep going because momentum kicked in, or you'll stop and you'll have still done more than you would have by procrastinating. Now here's the secret method I promised you, the 90-second rule. When you feel the urge to procrastinate, you give yourself 90 seconds. You sit with the discomfort. You don't act on it. You don't distract yourself. You just feel it. And here's what you'll discover: the feeling peaks and then fades. Urges aren't permanent. They're waves. And if you can ride the wave for 90 seconds without giving in, it passes. Your brain realizes the urge didn't kill you. And next time, the urge is weaker. This is exposure therapy for procrastination. You're teaching your brain that discomfort isn't dangerous, that you can feel the resistance and not obey it. And over time, your tolerance for discomfort increases. The things that used to stop you don't stop you anymore. You become someone who acts despite how they feel. And that's when everything changes. Because at the end of the day, procrastination is a choice. It doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like something that happens to you, but it's not. Every time you delay, you're choosing temporary comfort over future progress. And every time you act, you're choosing growth over comfort. You're voting for the person you're becoming. So here's my question for you. What are you voting for? Who are you becoming with your actions today? Because your future is being written right now, not by your intentions, not by your plans, by what you do in the next 5 minutes. And if you keep choosing procrastination, you already know how this story ends. But if you choose action, messy, imperfect, uncomfortable action, you become someone new. Someone who doesn't wait. Someone who doesn't negotiate with fear. Someone who kills procrastination the moment it shows up. The task you're avoiding isn't going to get easier. The fear isn't going to disappear. The perfect moment isn't coming. But you can start anyway, right now. 2 minutes, one action. That's all it takes to break the cycle. So what's it going to be?